You are the solution to your future. Introduction. The idea that your future is already in your hands is not just a poetic sentiment. It is a scientific reality and a practical truth. Every choice you make, every belief you carry, and every action you repeat becomes a data point in the unfolding equation of your life. Too often we are conditioned to believe that the answers we seek exist outside ourselves, in experts, in institutions, in luck, or in circumstances beyond our control. While outside influences certainly play a role, the truth is that your most reliable, renewable, and transformative resource is you. You are both the architect and the raw material of your future, and the quality of your tomorrow is shaped by how you design yourself today. When we look at the world of science and systems, we find principles that echo this truth. A system produces outcomes based on its inputs, processes, and feedback loops. If you consistently feed a system the same faulty inputs, you will continue to get faulty results. If you design the system with clarity, coherence, and adaptability, it produces extraordinary outcomes. You too are a living system. Your thoughts are inputs, your habits are processes, and your experiences provide the feedback. The future you are moving toward is not random. It is the output of a system you operate every single day. Transformation begins when you take ownership of this system. The first step is not to chase external solutions, but to recognize the internal power you already hold. This book will not give you a magic formula that erases all challenges, because no such formula exists. Instead, it will show you how to activate the potential that lies dormant within you, how to align your choices with the future you desire, and how to use scientific principles of growth and wealth to engineer transformation. When you stop outsourcing your power and start acting as the scientist of your own life, you realize that the solution to every problem you face is closer than you think. The modern world is saturated with quick fix promises, productivity hacks, and external prescriptions for success. They may inspire short-term change, but they often collapse because they do not address the root, the person applying them. If you approach every new system or strategy with the same old mindset, you simply recreate the same results in a new form. True transformation is not about chasing another solution. It is about becoming the solution. You are not here to imitate someone else's formula for wealth, happiness, or meaning. You are here to understand yourself so deeply and design your life so intentionally that you create a system that works uniquely for you. Science reminds us that energy cannot be destroyed. It can only be transformed. Wealth, happiness, and fulfillment are also forms of energy. They move toward those who are able to generate, direct, and sustain them. If your current reality does not reflect the future you desire, it is not because you are lacking something essential. It is because the energy you already hold is not yet being directed in the most effective way. The gap between your present self and your future self is not filled with chance. It is filled with choices. This book is an invitation to approach your life like an experiment, not a gamble. Experiments are not about perfection. They are about curiosity, testing, learning, and iterating until the results align with the vision. When you see obstacles not as detours but as data, failure stops being a weight and becomes a compass. Every setback holds information about the adjustments required to move closer to your vision. Every success holds clues about what can be multiplied. Over time, the experiment refines itself and the results grow stronger, more reliable, and more sustainable. Your future is not written in stone, but it is also not a mystery waiting for someone else to solve. The solution is not hidden in a seminar, a secret technique, or a sudden stroke of luck. The solution is you. Your capacity to imagine, to learn, to adapt, and to act with intention is the most powerful wealth-building and life-transformating system in existence. As you turn these pages, you will not only learn how to see yourself differently, but also how to use that perspective to shape wealth, meaning, and a life that reflects the very best of your potential. The experiment begins with you, and the outcome is entirely in your hands. Chapter 1. The Science of Self as a System. Every human being is both a mystery and a formula. On one hand, we are complex, layered, and difficult to define in a single statement. On the other hand, when viewed through the lens of science and systems, our behavior and results become much easier to understand. You can think of yourself as a system not unlike the systems studied in physics, biology, or engineering. A system receives inputs, processes those inputs, and produces outputs. If you want to change the outputs, you cannot simply wish for a different result. You must either change the inputs, redesign the processes, or both. The fascinating truth is that your life follows the same principle. The results you see each day, whether in your finances, health, relationships, or personal growth, are outputs of the system that is you. Systems theory tells us that every system is perfectly designed to produce the results it is currently producing. If you feel stuck in repeating cycles, this principle provides both clarity and accountability. You are not failing because the universe has conspired against you. You are simply running a system that is delivering precisely what it was designed to deliver. This realization is not meant to be discouraging. On the contrary, it is liberating. If you designed the current system of your life, consciously or unconsciously, you can also redesign it. If you created habits, beliefs, and choices that led to your present, you also hold the power to create habits, beliefs, and choices that lead to your desired future. The system may be invisible when you operate unconsciously, but once you understand its structure, you gain the ability to transform it. And that's what conscious energetic, transformative therapy truly is. At the heart of this system are your thoughts. Neuroscience has shown us that the brain is not a fixed organ. Through neuroplasticity, the brain continuously rewires itself based on what you think, feel, and do repeatedly. Every thought creates a neural connection, and repeated thoughts strengthen those pathways. Over time, the most practiced thoughts become automatic, shaping the way you interpret the world. If your most common thoughts are rooted in scarcity, fear, or doubt, your brain reinforces those pathways, making them easier to access and harder to escape. If your most common thoughts are rooted in growth, opportunity, and confidence, your brain reinforces those instead. The system is neutral. It does not care whether it builds pathways that help or harm you. It simply responds to repetition. This is why becoming aware of your dominant thoughts is not a trivial exercise. It is the foundation of rewiring the system that defines your future. But thoughts alone do not run the system. They are inputs that shape your emotions and actions. When you combine thoughts with emotions, you create patterns that influence behavior. These behaviors, repeated over time, form habits. Habits are the processes of your system, and once established, they often run without conscious effort. Consider how brushing your teeth or driving a familiar route requires little thought. The same applies to how you handle money, respond to stress, or pursue opportunities. If your habits are aligned with your goals, they carry you forward with little friction. If they are misaligned, they quietly sabotage your progress, often without you realizing it. Outputs are the visible results of your system. They show up in the balance of your bank account, the health of your body, the strength of your relationships, and the satisfaction you feel when you reflect on your life. Outputs are data points, and data never lies. If you want to understand your system, you must be willing to observe the outputs without judgment or excuses. Numbers do not care about intention, they reflect action. If your current outputs do not match your desired future, it is not evidence of your inadequacy, but rather a signal that your system needs adjusting. One of the greatest mistakes people make is believing that transformation begins with chasing different outputs. They become obsessed with outcomes, wanting more money, more success, or more recognition, without first examining the system that produces them. This is like trying to force a factory to produce a different product without altering the machinery or materials. Change begins at the level of input and process, not output. This means examining your dominant thoughts, reshaping your emotional responses, and building habits that create alignment between who you are today and who you want to become. A helpful way to frame this is to see yourself as both the scientist and the experiment. As the scientist, you step back and observe your life with curiosity, looking at what works and what does not. You gather data, test new approaches, and learn from feedback. As the experiment, you are the living system being shaped and reshaped by the process. This dual role is powerful because it keeps you from falling into the trap of self-judgment. Scientists do not hate their experiments when the results are unexpected. They study them, adapt them, and refine them. You can do the same with yourself. If a habit does not lead to the result you hoped for, that is not failure. It is data about what requires adjustment. Seeing yourself as a system also helps remove the illusion of randomness. While life contains elements beyond our control, much of what we experience is the predictable output of processes we run every day. If you consistently spend more than you earn, the output is predictable debt. If you consistently nourish your body poorly and avoid movement, the output is predictable decline in health. If you consistently build strong habits of learning, investing, and connecting with others, the output is predictable growth and wealth. The system does not play favorites, it follows principles. Once you understand and align with those principles, you can predictably influence the trajectory of your life. The challenge for many people is that their system was not consciously designed. From childhood onward, we absorb beliefs, behaviors, and responses from family, culture, and environment. We inherit ways of thinking about money, success, and self-worth, often without questioning whether those patterns serve us. These inherited programs become the default operating system of our lives. Unless we interrupt and redesign them, we unconsciously replicate the results of those who came before us. This is why transformation requires both awareness and intention. You must become aware of the system you are running and then take intentional steps to redesign it in alignment with the future you want to create. This chapter is not an invitation to overcomplicate your life by analyzing every detail of your behavior. It is an invitation to recognize the simplicity and power of seeing yourself as a system. When you shift your perspective in this way, you no longer feel at the mercy of chance. You begin to see the connection between input, process, and output. You begin to understand that you have more control than you once imagined. You begin to realize that the future is not waiting to be discovered, it is waiting to be designed. The science of self as a system is the foundation for everything that follows in this book. It explains why some people, faced with the same external circumstances, achieve radically different outcomes. It clarifies why habits matter, why mindset matters, and why responsibility matters. Most importantly, it empowers you to take action. You are not a passive passenger in your own life. You are a living system, capable of rewiring, redesigning, and reinventing yourself. When you begin to see yourself in this way, you stop waiting for someone else to solve your problems and start realizing that the solution has been within you all along. Chapter 2. Wealth as energy, not just currency. When most people hear the word wealth, their minds immediately picture money, cash in hand, numbers on a bank statement, investments that grow with time. Money is indeed a visible and powerful representation of wealth, but it is only one dimension of it. Limiting the concept of wealth to currency alone blinds us to the deeper forces that actually generate prosperity and sustain it over time. Wealth is not simply about accumulation. It is about flow. It is energy in motion, constantly circulating, multiplying, and reshaping itself based on how it is directed. The individuals who appear to magnetize wealth into their lives are not simply lucky. They have learned to understand, align with, and direct this energy more effectively than others. In physics, energy is defined as the capacity to do work. It cannot be created or destroyed, only transferred or transformed. The same is true of wealth. Money, resources, ideas, relationships, and opportunities are all different forms of wealth energy. They move from one place to another, change form, and multiply when channeled effectively. When you spend money, you are not losing wealth, you are transferring energy from one form to another. When you invest, You are directing energy into a channel that has the potential to multiply. When you waste time or misuse your talents, you are dispersing energy in ways that do not return value. This perspective reframes wealth as something far greater than what is held in financial accounts. It becomes a holistic measure of how you steward, direct, and expand the energies available to you. If we think of life as a system, wealth can be understood as a system of flows. Imagine a river. It receives inputs from rain, streams, and melting snow, and it flows toward the sea. Along the way, it nourishes fields, powers turbines, and sustains ecosystems. The more efficiently and abundantly the river flows, the more life it supports. Money works in much the same way. When it flows, it nourishes businesses, families, and communities. When it is dammed by fear, hoarded without vision, or allowed to leak through wasteful habits, it stagnates and loses its power. True wealth is not measured by the temporary pooling of money in an account, but by the sustainable flow of value through your life and the lives you touch. Consider for a moment that your time is one of the most precious forms of wealth. Unlike money, which can be earned, lost, and regained, time cannot be recreated once it is spent. Every moment carries within it energy that can be directed toward building, learning, connecting, or creating. The wealthiest individuals on earth are not necessarily those with the largest bank accounts, but those who understand the value of their time and use it with precision. When you trade time for distractions or activities that do not serve your vision, you disperse wealth energy into unproductive channels. When you invest time in learning, cultivating relationships, or building systems, you direct energy into channels that compound over years. This reframing places you back in control. Even if you do not have vast financial resources at the moment, you hold immense wealth in the form of time, creativity, and choices. Creativity itself is another form of wealth. Ideas are energy in their rawest form, capable of transforming entire industries and societies. A single idea, executed with commitment, can generate more financial wealth than years of routine labor. The challenge is that many people dismiss their own creativity, believing it has little value compared to traditional forms of capital. Yet history repeatedly shows that wealth flows to those who recognize the power of ideas and invest in bringing them to life. The smartphone, the electric car, the streaming service, all began as ideas, as sparks of energy in the minds of individuals who refuse to dismiss them. Creativity is the seed of wealth because it introduces new channels for energy to flow. Relationships, too, are channels of wealth energy. No one creates lasting prosperity in isolation. Networks of trust, collaboration, and shared vision allow wealth to circulate more efficiently. A connection with the right person can open doors to opportunities that money alone cannot buy. Conversely, toxic or draining relationships can leak energy from your system, leaving you depleted regardless of financial standing. The wealthiest people in terms of fulfillment and impact tend to be those who understand the currency of relationships and invest in them with authenticity and generosity. When you give value to others, you create reciprocal energy that often returns in ways far beyond your initial investment. One of the most powerful implications of viewing wealth as energy is that scarcity and abundance become matters of flow, not fixed realities. Scarcity occurs when energy is blocked, misdirected, or wasted. Abundance occurs when energy is aligned, multiplied, and allowed to circulate freely. This explains why some people can earn vast sums of money and still feel poor, because their energy is trapped in fear, debt, or consumption without purpose. Others may have modest financial means, yet live with a profound sense of wealth, because their time, creativity, and relationships are flowing with alignment and meaning. The true measure of wealth is not the size of the reservoir, but the vitality of the current. To harness wealth as energy, you must first become conscious of where it currently flows in your life. This requires observation without judgment. Look at how you spend your time each day. Consider the energy you invest in your relationships. Reflect on whether your creativity is being expressed or suppressed. Examine how money moves in and out of your life, and whether it multiplies through intentional investment or dissipates through impulsive consumption. These observations provide the data needed to re-engineer the flow of your system. Remember, the system is always producing results. If you are dissatisfied with those results, you must alter the channels of flow. It is equally important to recognize that wealth responds to coherence. When your thoughts, actions, and values are aligned, energy moves with less resistance. People are drawn to clarity and integrity because it creates trust, and trust is the gateway through which wealth flows. If your actions contradict your stated values, or if your habits undermine your goals, energy leaks from your system. On the other hand, when you live in alignment, opportunities appear to find you because your system is receptive and coherent. What looks like luck from the outside is often simply the predictable result of inner and outer alignment. Wealth also thrives on multiplication. Just as energy can be amplified through leverage in physics, wealth can be multiplied when directed strategically. This is why compounding is considered one of the most powerful forces in finance. Small, consistent investments of money, time, or effort can multiply exponentially over years. The same principle applies to relationships and skills. A single connection nurtured over time can lead to opportunities far beyond its initial value. A single skill practiced consistently can elevate you above competition and open new channels of wealth. Multiplication requires patience, discipline, and vision, but its effects are transformative. At its essence, wealth is about stewardship of energy. You are entrusted with time, creativity, relationships, and resources, and how you direct them shapes not only your personal future, but the future of those connected to you. To see wealth only as money is to ignore the larger currents of energy that create and sustain prosperity. By broadening your understanding, you move beyond the narrow pursuit of accumulation and step into the expansive role of a creator and director of energy. This shift does not diminish the importance of money. Instead, it places money in its rightful context as one expression of a much larger system. When you begin to treat wealth as energy, your decisions change. You stop asking only, "How much money will this bring me?" and begin asking, "How does this decision affect the flow of energy in my life? Does it multiply or deplete it? Does it create coherence or fragmentation?" These questions guide you to invest not only in financial growth, but in holistic wealth. Over time, you discover that financial prosperity naturally follows when you manage the larger currents of wealth with wisdom and intention. The truth is that you are already wealthy. You possess the time, creativity, energy, and relationships that form the foundation of prosperity. The challenge is not acquiring wealth from the outside, but recognizing, activating, and directing the wealth you already hold. When you align these energies with purpose, you step into abundance that is not fragile but resilient, not temporary but generative. Wealth in this sense becomes less about what you have and more about who you are. It is the natural outcome of living as the solution to your own future. Chapter 3. The Formula of Responsibility. Responsibility is a word that often carries heavy connotations, as though it is a burden placed on our shoulders, a weight we must carry to prove we are capable. Many resist it because it seems to demand sacrifice, seriousness, or punishment. Yet responsibility, when properly understood, is not a punishment at all. It is freedom. It is the recognition that you are the author of your own system, the designer of your outcomes, and the shaper of your future. Without responsibility, you are at the mercy of external forces, dependent on luck, circumstance, or other people's choices. With responsibility, you gain the ability to shape events, redirect energy, and alter the trajectory of your life. It is not about fault, it is about ownership. Taking responsibility means acknowledging that while you may not control everything that happens to you, you always control how you respond and what you create moving forward. In system science, every output is tied to an input and a process. Nothing emerges out of nowhere. Every result has a cause. When people deny responsibility, they sever the connection between their actions and their outcomes. They say, "It's not my fault," and by doing so, they also say, "It's not within my power to change." This mindset is one of the most damaging forms of self-sabotage because it convinces people that they are powerless. Responsibility restores that connection. It bridges input and output. It declares, if my current results are unsatisfying, then I have the power to alter the inputs and processes that created them. This is not about blame, because blame paralyzes. It is about agency, because agency empowers. When you adopt responsibility as a formula for transformation, you realize that success is never accidental. People who thrive in wealth, health, or relationships are not merely fortunate, they are responsible. They accept that their future is the natural outcome of their daily choices, so they make those choices deliberately. Responsibility creates clarity. Instead of searching for excuses, you search for causes. Instead of waiting for circumstances to change, you focus on the adjustments you can make in your system. The formula becomes simple. Responsibility plus action equals transformation. Without responsibility, action loses its power because it is disconnected from ownership. Without action, responsibility becomes empty intention. Together, they generate the force that rewires your life. It is important to distinguish responsibility from control. You cannot control every variable in life, and pretending you can will only create frustration. Markets fluctuate, economies shift, people act unpredictably, and circumstances change without warning. Responsibility is not about controlling every variable. It is about controlling the one variable that is always within your reach: yourself. Your mindset, your decisions, your habits, and your responses are yours to shape. This is where the formula of responsibility becomes liberating rather than burdensome. When you focus on the controllable, you stop wasting energy on what you cannot change and start investing energy in what you can. This shift creates efficiency in the system of your life. Energy leaks caused by worry, blame, or resentment are closed, and energy is redirected toward productive channels. In psychology, there is a principle called locus of control. People with an external locus believe their lives are governed by fate, chance, or external forces. People with an internal locus believe their outcomes are shaped by their own actions and decisions. Numerous studies have shown that individuals with a strong internal locus of control tend to be more successful, resilient, and fulfilled. This is because responsibility is the essence of an internal locus. It affirms that even when circumstances are difficult, you can adjust your system to navigate them. This mindset transforms obstacles into opportunities for growth, because each challenge becomes a chance to exercise responsibility and strengthen your ability to create new outcomes. Many people avoid responsibility because it feels like admitting fault. They fear that by saying "this result is mine," they are condemning themselves for past mistakes. But responsibility is not about judgment of the past, it is about authority over the future. The past is data, not destiny. If a choice you made led to failure, responsibility allows you to see it as information that can improve the next experiment. Without responsibility, failure becomes a story of inadequacy. With responsibility, failure becomes a teacher. In this sense, responsibility reframes your entire relationship with mistakes. It transforms them from weights into tools, from obstacles into data points. Another misconception is that responsibility means carrying everything alone. In truth, responsibility is about clarity of role, not isolation. It means acknowledging that you are responsible for your actions, but it also means recognizing that others are responsible for theirs. You cannot control what others do, but you can control how you engage, how you set boundaries, and how you respond. This understanding frees you from both the trap of blame and the trap of overextend. You do not have to solve everyone's problems. You only have to take ownership of your own. When you live this way, your energy becomes focused and powerful rather than scattered and drained. The formula of responsibility also reshapes how you see wealth. Many people chase financial success while blaming external conditions for their lack of progress. They blame the economy, the market, or their background. While these factors influence outcomes, they are not the whole equation. Those who accept responsibility focus instead on what they can control, skills they can build, value they can create, and opportunities they can pursue. By doing so, they align themselves with the flow of wealth energy described in the previous chapter. They stop waiting for conditions to improve and start creating conditions for improvement. This proactive stance attracts opportunities, builds trust with others, and multiplies results over time. It is worth remembering that responsibility does not always feel comfortable. It demands honesty, and honesty can be uncomfortable when it reveals patterns we would rather ignore. It is easier to point outward and say, "It's not my fault," than to look inward and admit, "I could have done differently." Yet it is precisely in that discomfort that power lies. Every time you accept responsibility, you reclaim energy that was previously lost to excuses. You bring the system of your life back under conscious design. Discomfort is temporary, but the empowerment that comes from responsibility is lasting. Responsibility is also the foundation of trust, both with yourself and with others. When you consistently take ownership of your actions and their outcomes, you build credibility. People trust those who live responsibly because they know such individuals are reliable and accountable. More importantly, you begin to trust yourself. Self-trust is the confidence that you will follow through on your commitments, that you will not abandon yourself when challenges arise. Without self-trust, every goal feels fragile. With self-trust, even the most ambitious vision feels possible because you know you will meet it with responsibility and perseverance. The formula of responsibility can be summed up in a simple shift of language. Instead of saying, "I have to," you say, "I choose to." Instead of saying, "I can't," you say, "I haven't yet found the way." Instead of saying, "It's not my fault," you say, "It is my opportunity to learn." These shifts are not empty affirmations. They are recalibrations of the system. They transform passive language into active ownership, and in doing so, they rewire the brain to operate with an internal locus of control. Over time, this new language shapes new beliefs, which shape new habits, which generate new outputs. At its deepest level, responsibility is an act of empowerment. It is the decision to stop living as a passenger and start living as a driver. It is the recognition that while you cannot control the wind, you can adjust the sails. It is the awareness that your life is not happening to you, it is happening through you. Each choice, each response, each habit is a thread in the fabric of your future. Responsibility is the loom on which that fabric is woven. By embracing it, you do not weigh yourself down. You lift yourself up. You step fully into the truth that you are the solution to your future, not by chance, not by luck, but by deliberate design. Chapter 4. Vision, the physics of future creation. Every structure ever built, every company ever founded, every piece of art ever created, and every breakthrough invention began as something invisible. Long before they were concrete, they existed as images in the mind, possibilities that had not yet materialized but carried the potential to shape reality. Vision is the bridge between imagination and manifestation. Without vision, life becomes reactive, shaped entirely by external forces and immediate circumstances. With vision, life becomes intentional, directed by an inner compass that points toward a desired destination. Vision is not fantasy. It is the physics of future creation. It operates like a blueprint for the mind and a signal to the universe, aligning actions, energy, and opportunities with the outcome you hold clearly in focus. In the language of science, every system follows a trajectory. In physics, objects in motion continue along a predictable path unless acted upon by an external force. Human lives follow a similar principle. Without vision, your trajectory is determined by default, by habits, cultural programming, or random circumstances. Vision functions as the external force that alters trajectory. It shifts your path from drifting aimlessly to moving deliberately. It provides a reference point that allows you to measure progress, adjust behavior, and sustain momentum. Just as a GPS requires a destination before it can chart a route, the human mind requires a vision to align thought, energy, and action. Without it, the system operates without direction, and outputs remain inconsistent and fragmented. Neuroscience offers powerful insights into the mechanics of vision. The brain has a system known as the reticular activating system, which filters the overwhelming flood of information we encounter each day. This system determines what we notice and what we ignore. When you hold a clear vision, the brain tags it as significant, and suddenly your awareness is tuned to opportunities, resources, and connections that align with it. It is not that these opportunities did not exist before, it is that you were not primed to notice them. Vision, therefore, does not only guide action, it shapes perception. It literally changes the way your brain filters reality, allowing you to see pathways that would have remained invisible without a defined goal. Clarity is the essential ingredient of vision. A vague desire produces vague results, while a precise vision sharpens the entire system. Saying you want to be successful is not a vision, it is a wish. Saying you want to build a business that generates sustainable income while impacting a specific community is a vision. The difference lies in specificity, and specificity acts like gravity, pulling resources and effort into alignment. The clearer the image in your mind, the stronger the pull. This is why great leaders, innovators, and creators all emphasize clarity of vision. They understand that it is not enough to want change. One must define what that change looks like in detail. Vision also has a magnetic quality. People are drawn to those who articulate a compelling future. In organizations, teams align when leaders cast a vision worth pursuing. In personal life, relationships deepen when partners share a vision of the life they are building together. This magnetism is not mystical, it is psychological. Humans crave meaning, and vision provides meaning by connecting present action to future purpose. When you invite others into your vision, you create shared meaning, and shared meaning creates loyalty, energy, and collaboration. Vision, then, is not only personal, it is relational. It becomes the foundation for building communities, businesses, and movements. Skeptics often dismiss vision as unrealistic dreaming, but history proves otherwise. Every major advancement was once dismissed as impossible. Flight was once absurd. Electricity was once mysterious. Digital communication across the globe was once unimaginable. Yet visionaries held their images so clearly that they became relentless in pursuit, adjusting methods but never surrendering the destination. Vision transforms what seems impossible into the inevitable by aligning persistence with possibility. This is why vision must be bigger than comfort. If it is only as large as what you already know how to achieve, it does not stretch the system. True vision lives on the edge of the unknown, demanding growth, learning, and transformation. The power of vision also lies in its ability to anchor you in difficult times. Every journey contains setbacks, and every system encounters resistance. Without vision, resistance feels like defeat. With vision, resistance feels like data, part of the process of refinement. Vision acts as the constant that allows you to adjust strategies without losing direction. If the roadblocks are high, vision keeps you searching for alternate routes. If setbacks are painful, vision reminds you why you endure. It sustains motivation not by removing obstacles but by making obstacles worth overcoming. This is why people who hold strong visions are often more resilient. Their endurance is not rooted in sheer willpower but in connection to a future they refuse to abandon. Vision must, however, be coupled with action. A vision without action is a dream that evaporates, while action without vision is movement without meaning. The physics of future creation requires both. Vision sets the destination, and action charts the path. Vision provides direction, and action provides momentum. Together, they transform intangible possibility into tangible reality. This is why the most transformative individuals in any field are those who not only see clearly but also act consistently. They refuse to let vision remain in the realm of imagination. They test, experiment, and build, knowing that each step brings the invisible closer to visibility. Another important element of vision is alignment with values. A vision disconnected from your core values will feel hollow even if achieved. People often pursue visions shaped by external expectations, seeking wealth, recognition, or success defined by others, only to find emptiness at the destination. True vision must be authentic. It must resonate with who you are at the deepest level. When your vision aligns with your values, the journey itself becomes fulfilling, not just the destination. You find joy in the process because each step feels coherent with your identity. Alignment turns vision from a chase into a calling, from pressure into purpose. Vision also operates as a multiplier of energy. When you know why you are doing something and where you are heading, effort becomes more efficient. Energy that would otherwise scatter in indecision or distraction converges into focused action. Vision filters out what does not serve you, reducing wasted effort. It acts as a compass, guiding you to say yes to what aligns and no to what distracts. This multiplication effect explains why people with vision often appear more productive or lucky. They are not working harder, they are working with more focus, channeling energy toward a coherent outcome. Perhaps the most profound truth about vision is that it creates identity. The future self you envision becomes a reference point for the present self. Each day you can ask, what would the person I am becoming do in this situation? By acting in alignment with that future self, you gradually embody it. Vision is not just about achieving goals, it is about becoming. It is about sculpting yourself into the person capable of living the life you imagine. In this sense, vision is both destination and path, both blueprint and transformation. To live without vision is to surrender to randomness. To live with vision is to design the future. You cannot always predict the details of how the journey will unfold, but with vision, you can influence the trajectory with remarkable precision. It is the foundation of every significant transformation, the force that converts imagination into creation. The physics of future creation is simple. What you consistently hold in your mind with clarity, align with your values, and pursue with persistent action will eventually materialize. Vision is the starting point, the compass, and the fuel. It is proof that you are not simply drifting through life, you are creating it, moment by moment, image by image, choice by choice. Chapter 5. Habits. Micro-solutions with macro impact. The story of your life is written not in dramatic moments of decision, but in the quiet repetitions of your days. While visions inspire and responsibility empowers, it is habits that give shape to those intentions. Habits are the micro-solutions that accumulate into macro impact. They are the processes that determine the outputs of your personal system. For better or worse, your habits are the invisible architecture of your future. You may dream of extraordinary wealth, health, or purpose, but the quality of your habits decides whether those dreams remain fantasies or become tangible realities. Habits are powerful because they operate below the level of conscious effort. Once formed, they run on autopilot, conserving mental energy and directing behavior without constant decision-making. This is why they can be both a blessing and a curse. Good habits propel you forward effortlessly, while destructive habits undermine you silently. If you brush your teeth every morning, you hardly think about it, yet that habit prevents decay and disease over time. If you unconsciously spend more than you earn, that habit quietly erodes your financial stability year after year. Habits may seem small in isolation, but their compounded effect is immense. The key to transformation is therefore not dramatic overhaul, but consistent recalibration of the habits that drive your daily system. Neuroscience shows us that habits are formed through a loop of cue, routine, and reward. A cue triggers a behavior, The routine is the action itself, and the reward reinforces the loop, making it more likely to repeat. Understanding this cycle is crucial because it reveals that habits are not fixed traits. They are processes that can be redesigned. If you want to break a destructive habit, you must disrupt the loop, either by removing the cue, replacing the routine, or altering the reward. If you want to create a new habit, you must deliberately design the loop to make repetition easier until it becomes automatic. By working with the mechanics of habits rather than against them, you stop relying on willpower alone and begin engineering sustainable change. The compounding nature of habits mirrors the compounding principle in finance. Just as small, consistent investments multiply into significant wealth over time, small, consistent behaviors multiply into profound transformation. Reading 10 pages of a book each day may not feel life-changing in the moment, but over a year, it adds up to several books, reshaping knowledge and perspective. Saving a modest amount each month may not seem impressive at first, but compounded over years, it builds financial stability and freedom. Exercising for 15 minutes a day may seem insignificant, but over time, it strengthens health, resilience, and confidence. The mathematics of habits is exponential. What feels small today becomes massive tomorrow, not because of intensity, but because of consistency. One of the greatest mistakes people make when pursuing transformation is overestimating what can be achieved in a short period, while underestimating what can be achieved over a long one. They pursue radical diets, intense work sprints, or sudden life overhauls, only to burn out and collapse back into old patterns. Real change is almost never a matter of revolution, it is a matter of evolution. Habits create this evolution by embedding change into the daily fabric of life. They reduce the friction of transformation, because once a habit is formed, it no longer requires constant motivation. Discipline creates the habit, and the habit sustains itself. Habits also reveal the truth about alignment. If your stated vision is to build wealth, but your daily habit is unchecked spending, your system is misaligned. If your vision is to write a book, but your daily habit is to avoid the page, your system is misaligned. Vision without habits is a hollow wish. Habits translate vision into action by anchoring lofty ideas into tangible behavior. They connect the future self you imagine to the present self you embody. Every habit is a vote for the identity you are becoming. When you choose to exercise, you cast a vote for health. When you choose to save, you cast a vote for financial freedom. When you choose to learn, you cast a vote for growth. Each vote may seem small, but over time they accumulate into identity and destiny. Resistance often arises when people attempt to change habits because the brain craves efficiency and familiarity. Neural pathways formed by repeated behaviors become strong, and breaking them requires conscious effort and discomfort. This is why many people give up after a short time. They misinterpret discomfort as failure. In reality, discomfort is evidence that new pathways are forming. The brain is being rewired, and that process feels unfamiliar. If you persist long enough, the new pathway strengthens, and what was once difficult becomes natural. The key is persistence during the awkward phase, trusting that every repetition is carving the grooves of a new future. Another dimension of habits worth noting is the environment in which they operate. Habits are not only shaped by willpower, but also by the cues embedded in your surroundings. If your environment is cluttered with distractions, destructive habits thrive. If your environment is structured to support positive behaviors, constructive habits flourish. For example, placing healthy food within easy reach increases the likelihood of good choices, while hiding tempting snacks reduces the chance of indulgence. Placing a book on your nightstand makes it easier to read before bed, while removing your phone from reach reduces the temptation of endless scrolling. By designing environments that reduce friction for good habits and increase friction for bad ones, you align the system in your favor. It is also essential to recognize that habits are contagious. The people around you influence your behaviors more than you realize. Studies show that if your close friends or family members are obese, you are more likely to become obese yourself. If your peers save money and invest wisely, you are more likely to adopt similar financial habits. This does not mean you are powerless in the face of social influence, but it does mean you must choose your circles with awareness. Surrounding yourself with individuals who embody the habits you aspire to develop creates a supportive ecosystem that reinforces your growth. The beauty of habits is that they compound silently. You may not notice the effects of your actions in the moment, but time amplifies them. This silence can be deceptive, leading many to abandon habits because the results are not immediate. Yet the law of compounding is patient but relentless. Habits either build momentum in the direction of growth or erosion in the direction of decline. The question is not whether your habits are shaping your future. They always are. The real question is whether they are shaping it in alignment with your vision. Habits are not destiny, but they are powerful predictors of it. The system of your life is not determined by occasional bursts of effort, but by the rhythms you sustain daily. If you want to know your future, look at your habits. If they align with your vision, your trajectory is secure. If they do not, no amount of wishing will compensate. The future is built in increments, and habits are the bricks with which it is constructed. By mastering habits, you master the art of building a future that reflects your highest potential. In the end, habits are the quiet architects of transformation. They require no applause, no dramatic declarations, and no extraordinary talent. They require only consistency, awareness, and design. When you commit to shaping your habits intentionally, you create a system that works on your behalf, carrying you toward your vision without constant strain. Habits prove that the solution to your future is not hidden in grand gestures, but in daily repetitions. They are the micro-solutions that, compounded over time, generate macro impact. In this truth lies both simplicity and power. Change your habits, and you change your life. Chapter 6. Mindset Engineering. Rewiring the Inner Lab. If habits are the building blocks of transformation, mindset is the foundation on which those blocks rest. Every decision you make, every action you take, and every habit you sustain is filtered through the lens of your mindset. Mindset is the operating system of your inner laboratory, shaping how you interpret experiences, how you respond to challenges, and how you define what is possible for your future. It is invisible yet undeniable, silent yet powerful, always active whether you pay attention to it or not. If you want to create meaningful and lasting transformation, you must become the engineer of your mindset, consciously rewiring the inner lab that determines the outputs of your life. Mindset is not a single thought or belief, but a constellation of attitudes, assumptions, and expectations that form a framework for interpreting reality. Two people can encounter the same circumstance, but respond in radically different ways depending on their mindset. One may see failure as proof of inadequacy, while the other sees it as feedback for growth. One may view wealth as scarce and unattainable, while the other views it as abundant and accessible through value creation. These differences in interpretation shape behavior, and behavior shapes outcomes. Over time, mindset becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you believe opportunities are everywhere, you are more likely to recognize and act on them. If you believe the world is against you, you unconsciously filter evidence to confirm that belief. The inner lab produces results consistent with its programming. Neuroscience affirms that the brain is adaptable. Through neuroplasticity, neural pathways strengthen or weaken based on repetition. If you repeatedly feed your brain thoughts of limitation, those pathways grow dominant, creating a mindset of scarcity and fear. If you repeatedly feed your brain thoughts of possibility, those pathways strengthen, creating a mindset of growth and resilience. This adaptability is both a warning and an invitation. It warns that if you leave your mindset unattended, it will default to the influences of environment, culture, and fear. It invites you to recognize that you can consciously rewire those pathways by choosing the thoughts you reinforce and the perspectives you practice. Mindset engineering is not wishful thinking. It is deliberate neurological design. Psychologist Carol Dweck's work on fixed and growth mindsets illustrates this principle. A fixed mindset assumes abilities and intelligence are static, leading to avoidance of challenges and fear of failure. A growth mindset assumes abilities can be developed, leading to resilience, persistence, and willingness to learn. These mindsets shape entire life trajectories. A fixed mindset system avoids risks and stagnates, while a growth mindset system adapts, evolves, and thrives. Recognizing your mindset is the first step toward engineering it. If you find yourself avoiding difficulty, dismissing feedback, or resenting others' success, these are signals of a fixed orientation. If you embrace challenges, seek feedback, and celebrate others' progress as proof of possibility, you are operating from a growth orientation. The choice is yours, but the outcomes diverge dramatically. Rewiring your mindset begins with awareness. Like any experiment in a laboratory, you must first observe the existing conditions. Pay attention to the language you use when speaking about yourself and your future. Words like "I can't," "I never," or "that's just who I am" are indicators of limiting beliefs embedded in your operating system. These phrases act like code that programs your responses and narrows your possibilities. Once you recognize these patterns, you can begin rewriting them. Rewriting does not mean pretending difficulties do not exist. It means reframing your interpretation to create possibility rather than limitation. Instead of "I can't," you might say, "I haven't figured it out yet." Instead of "I failed," you might say, "I gathered data for my next attempt." These small shifts in language alter the way your brain encodes experience, gradually building new pathways of thought. Another powerful tool of mindset engineering is visualization. The brain does not fully distinguish between vividly imagined experiences and real ones. Athletes use this principle to rehearse performances mentally, strengthening neural pathways that improve actual execution. You can use the same principle to engineer your mindset toward your vision. By consistently visualizing yourself as the future self you aspire to become, acting with confidence, creating value, sustaining wealth, you create a mental rehearsal that primes your brain to recognize and seize aligned opportunities. Visualization is not about fantasy. It is about training your inner lab to normalize success so that when it appears, you respond with readiness rather than disbelief. Environment plays a crucial role in shaping mindset. Just as a laboratory requires the right conditions to produce accurate results, your mind requires an environment that supports growth. If you surround yourself with negativity, cynicism, and scarcity, those inputs influence your operating system. If you immerse yourself in positivity, possibility, and examples of resilience, those inputs strengthen a growth orientation. The books you read, the conversations you engage in, the media you consume, and the people you spend time with are all inputs to your inner lab. Responsibility means curating these inputs with intention, recognizing that they either reinforce or undermine the mindset you are engineering. Mindset engineering also requires resilience, because rewiring the brain is not instant. Old pathways resist change, and setbacks trigger old narratives. In these moments, the temptation to abandon growth is strong, but if you treat setbacks as data rather than defeat, you strengthen the growth mindset itself. Each time you persist through difficulty, you prove to your brain that challenges are survivable and often instructive. Over time, resilience becomes encoded as a default response. Instead of collapsing under pressure, you adapt. Instead of fearing uncertainty, you explore it. Resilience is not the absence of struggle, it is the presence of mindset that interprets struggle as progress. The practical power of mindset engineering becomes most visible when applied to wealth creation. If you carry a scarcity mindset, you view money as finite, competition as threatening, and opportunities as rare. This mindset leads to defensive behavior, hoarding, comparison, hesitation that ironically limits growth. If you carry an abundance mindset, you view money as energy, competition as collaboration, and opportunities as expansive. This mindset leads to proactive behavior, investing, sharing, innovating, that multiplies growth. Both mindsets operate in the same world, but they generate vastly different outputs because they process inputs differently. By engineering a mindset of abundance, you alter the system of your life to align with wealth rather than repel it. Mindset is also the foundation of identity. The stories you tell yourself about who you are create the boundaries of what you believe is possible. If your story is that you are unlucky, incapable, or undeserving, your brain filters experience to confirm that narrative. If your story is that you are resourceful, adaptable, and worthy, your brain filters experience to align with that identity. To engineer mindset is to edit your story, not by denying reality, but by reframing it in a way that empowers growth. This does not mean ignoring difficulties, but interpreting them as part of the journey toward becoming the person you envision. Identity and mindset are intertwined, and together they shape destiny. Engineering your mindset is not a one-time project, but an ongoing process. Just as scientists continuously refine their experiments based on new data, you must continuously refine your mindset based on new experiences. There will always be moments of doubt, fear, or limitation, but with awareness, you can interrupt those moments and redirect them. Each redirection strengthens new pathways, gradually shifting your default operating system. Over time, the lab of your mind becomes optimized for growth, resilience, and abundance. It begins to produce outputs that once seemed out of reach, not because the world changed, but because you changed the lens through which you engaged it. Ultimately, mindset engineering is the practice of claiming authorship over your inner lab. It is the conscious choice to design the operating system that shapes your reality rather than leaving it to be programmed by chance, culture, or fear. When you rewire your mindset, you rewire your future. You step out of limitation and into possibility, not by erasing struggle, but by interpreting it differently. The future you desire requires more than vision and habits. It requires a mindset capable of sustaining them. By becoming the engineer of your inner lab, you activate the power to transform not only what you do, but who you are. And in that transformation lies the undeniable truth. You are, and always have been, the solution to your future. Chapter 7. The Wealth Equation. Value, Flow, Multiplication. Wealth is often spoken of as though it is a mystery, an elusive treasure that only a few are destined to unlock. Yet when examined through the lens of science and systems thinking, wealth reveals itself as a set of principles that can be understood, applied, and multiplied. It is not random. It is not purely a matter of luck. It is the outcome of aligning certain variables in a consistent way, creating outputs that grow steadily over time. The most powerful way to think about this is to see wealth as an equation, one that combines value, flow, and multiplication. When you learn how to generate value, sustain the flow of that value, and multiply the results, wealth begins to expand in ways that may once have seemed unattainable. At the center of this equation is value. Money is simply the medium of exchange for value, and without value there can be no sustainable wealth. To generate wealth, you must first generate value, whether through products, services, ideas, or relationships. Value is anything that solves a problem, meets a need, or enhances life for others. This truth is liberating because it means wealth is not tied to where you were born, who you know, or what you inherited. It is tied to your capacity to create and deliver value. Every innovation, every thriving business, every transformative career is anchored in this principle. Those who focus obsessively on extracting money without creating value may achieve short-term gains, but the system eventually collapses because it lacks foundation. Those who focus on creating genuine value often find that money flows as a natural byproduct. Understanding value requires a shift in perspective. Too often people approach wealth from the standpoint of how can I get rather than how can I give. This mindset of extraction creates resistance because it ignores the basic law of exchange. Systems thrive when there is reciprocity, when energy moves in both directions. By focusing on giving value, you align yourself with this law, creating a system in which others willingly exchange money, time, or resources in return for what you provide. The greater the value, the greater the willingness to exchange. This does not mean depleting yourself or sacrificing your worth. It means channeling your creativity, skills, and effort into outputs that genuinely matter to others. In this way, value becomes the seed of all sustainable wealth. The second component of the wealth equation is flow. Value alone is not enough if it does not circulate. Imagine water locked in a reservoir without outlets. Over time, it stagnates, losing vitality. Wealth behaves the same way. It must move, exchange hands, and circulate through systems to generate growth. When wealth flows, it nourishes businesses, communities, and individuals, multiplying its impact. Fear often causes people to block flow, hoarding resources in the belief that holding tightly ensures security. But just as stagnant water becomes toxic, stagnant wealth loses its capacity to generate growth. Flow is not recklessness, it is intentional circulation. It is about ensuring that money, ideas, and opportunities are continuously moving through productive channels. This is why investment matters. It keeps wealth in motion, allowing it to create returns. This is why generosity matters. It expands networks of trust and reciprocity, ensuring that the system continues to thrive. Flow also applies to non-financial forms of wealth such as time, energy, and relationships. If you hoard your time in isolation, refusing to engage or contribute, opportunities dry up. If you hoard your creativity, never sharing it with others, it withers in potential rather than flourishing in expression. If you hoard relationships, seeking only to take rather than give, connections weaken and trust evaporates. Flow ensures that wealth of all kinds is not locked away but circulated. This circulation in turn creates resilience. Systems that flow adapt more easily to change, while systems that stagnate collapse under pressure. In this sense, flow is not only a wealth principle, it is a survival principle. The third element of the wealth equation is multiplication. Once value is created and flow is established, the question becomes how to scale. Multiplication is the principle that transforms modest beginnings into extraordinary results. It is rooted in leverage, the ability to use existing resources to create outcomes disproportionate to the input. In finance, multiplication occurs through compounding interest, where returns generate further returns, creating exponential growth over time. In life, multiplication occurs when you design systems that continue to produce value even when you are not directly present. This could mean building businesses that operate beyond your hours, investing in assets that generate passive income, or creating intellectual property that continues to serve others long after the initial work is complete. Multiplication ensures that your effort is not limited to the hours you can personally expend, but expands into systems that sustain themselves. Multiplication also arises from networks. When you connect with others, share value, and collaborate, you multiply potential outcomes far beyond what you could achieve alone. One relationship can open the door to countless opportunities, just as one investment can branch into multiple streams of income. The exponential nature of multiplication means that small beginnings should not be dismissed. Just as a single seed can grow into a tree that produces thousands of additional seeds, a single action taken consistently and strategically can multiply into results that reshape your future. The challenge is to remain patient, because multiplication often feels invisible in the early stages. Growth begins slowly, almost imperceptibly, until the system reaches a tipping point where results accelerate dramatically. Those who quit too soon never experience the exponential rewards, while those who persist are astonished by the compounding outcomes. Value, flow, and multiplication do not exist in isolation. They form a dynamic equation. Value without flow stagnates. Flow without multiplication dissipates. Multiplication without value collapses. Together they create a system that sustains and expands wealth. The equation is simple in principle, but profound in practice. To apply it requires both awareness and intention. You must continuously ask yourself, am I creating genuine value? Am I ensuring that value flows through systems of exchange rather than stagnating? Am I multiplying results through leverage, networks, and compounding? These questions keep the system aligned, preventing energy from being wasted or misdirected. This equation also exposes the fallacy of shortcuts. Wealth built on extraction without value, speculation without flow, or exploitation without multiplication may appear impressive for a time, but it is fragile. It lacks the systemic strength to endure. True wealth is resilient because it is anchored in principles that cannot be shaken by temporary fluctuations. Economies may shift, markets may rise and fall, but value, flow, and multiplication remain constant. Those who align with them thrive regardless of external conditions. This is why responsibility and mindset are essential precursors. Without responsibility, you refuse to own your role in the equation. Without the right mindset, you fail to perceive value, resist flow, or abandon multiplication. Wealth is not simply financial strategy. It is systemic alignment with enduring principles. To live by the wealth equation is to reframe your relationship with prosperity. It shifts your focus from mere accumulation to contribution, from fear to flow, from linear effort to exponential growth. It reveals that you are not excluded from wealth because of circumstance. You are invited into it through alignment with principles. Whether you begin with little or much, the same equation applies. Create value, ensure its flow, multiply the results. Over time, this alignment transforms not only your financial standing, but your sense of purpose and fulfillment. You cease to see wealth as something to chase and begin to see it as something you generate, circulate, and expand. The wealth equation proves that the solution to your future prosperity is not outside of you. It is within your ability to create, to contribute, to circulate, and to multiply. By engineering your system in alignment with these principles, you create outputs that are not accidental but intentional, not fragile but resilient, not temporary but enduring. Wealth becomes not only what you possess but what you embody. A living system of value, flow, and multiplication that sustains itself and expands far beyond your immediate life. Chapter 8. Obstacles as data, not detours. Every journey worth taking encounters resistance. No system of growth, no pursuit of wealth, no path of transformation unfolds without friction. Yet the way most people interpret obstacles determines whether they progress or stagnate. To some, obstacles are evidence that they are not capable, not ready, or not meant to succeed. To others, obstacles are signals, feedback that points to refinement, redirection, or resilience. The difference is not in the presence of obstacles, but in the interpretation of them. When you learn to see obstacles not as detours but as data, you reclaim their power. You stop resenting them and start using them. Instead of breaking momentum, they become catalysts for deeper learning, sharper strategy, and greater strength. In science, data is collected through observation and experimentation. A failed experiment is not wasted effort. It is valuable information about what does not work under certain conditions. Without this information, refinement would be impossible. Thomas Edison's famous response to his repeated failures in inventing the light bulb captures this perfectly. He did not fail thousands of times, but discovered thousands of ways that did not work. Each so-called failure narrowed the field, bringing him closer to the solution. Your life works the same way. Each obstacle you encounter carries data about your current system. It reveals what inputs, processes, or assumptions require adjustment. To dismiss obstacles as mere bad luck is to waste their data. To treat them as teachers is to accelerate your growth. Obstacles serve as mirrors. They reflect back the weak points in your design, the inconsistencies in your habits, or the limits of your mindset. If your financial plan collapses under stress, the obstacle is showing you where resilience must be built. If your relationship falters in conflict, the obstacle is revealing patterns of communication or trust that need refinement. If your vision stalls in execution, the obstacle is highlighting gaps in strategy or discipline. Seen through this lens, obstacles are not barriers to success, but indicators pointing to the adjustments necessary to achieve it. They are not punishments, but feedback loops, guiding you towards stronger systems. The problem is that many people misinterpret obstacles emotionally rather than scientifically. They experience failure and internalize it as proof of inadequacy. They encounter resistance and label it as a sign to quit. This interpretation is not only inaccurate but destructive. When you equate difficulty with impossibility, you abandon progress prematurely. The truth is that every system evolves through iteration. Airplanes were not perfected on the first flight. Businesses rarely thrive on their first attempt. Personal transformations almost never follow a linear path. Each obstacle encountered and examined provides data that strengthens the system. Abandoning the process too soon ensures that you never benefit from the information those obstacles carry. To use obstacles as data requires humility and curiosity. You must be willing to step back from frustration and ask, what is this teaching me? What does this reveal about my system? What adjustment is required to move forward? These questions shift your perspective from victimhood to experimentation. They turn failure from a dead end into a feedback mechanism. This mindset does not erase the sting of setbacks, but it transforms that sting into motivation. Pain becomes a pointer. Disappointment becomes direction. What once felt like defeat becomes raw material for growth. There is also a hidden benefit to obstacles. They build resilience. A life without challenge does not create strength. Just as muscles grow through resistance, character and capability grow through the demands obstacles place on you. Every time you confront difficulty and refuse to collapse, you expand your capacity. What once overwhelmed you becomes manageable. What once intimidated you becomes routine. Over time, obstacles cease to intimidate because you have proven to yourself that you can face them, adapt, and continue. This resilience becomes a competitive advantage. In a world where many quit at the first sign of struggle, those who persist not only survive, but thrive. It is important, however, to distinguish between persistence and stubbornness. Not every obstacle is a signal to push harder. Sometimes the data indicates the need to change direction entirely. A business model that consistently fails to generate demand is not always a test of endurance. It may be data revealing that value is missing or misaligned. A habit that repeatedly collapses under certain conditions may indicate that the environment requires restructuring. The wisdom lies in discerning whether an obstacle is calling for persistence, adaptation, or redirection. Blind insistence on pushing forward without interpreting the data leads to exhaustion. Strategic interpretation leads to growth. This principle also applies to wealth. Financial setbacks are often seen as disasters, but they are also data about how systems respond under pressure. A market downturn can reveal whether your investments are diversified. A failed venture can highlight gaps in planning or execution. Even personal financial struggles carry valuable lessons about discipline, priorities, and resilience. The wealthy are not those who never encounter setbacks. They are those who interpret setbacks as information, adjust accordingly, and re-enter the game stronger. Each obstacle becomes an education, and that education compounds into wisdom that protects and multiplies wealth over time. Obstacles also test alignment with vision. When challenges arise, they force you to ask whether your vision is compelling enough to endure discomfort. If your vision is weak, obstacles will break your motivation. If your vision is strong, obstacles will sharpen it. This is why clarity of vision matters so deeply. Without it, resistance feels meaningless. With it, resistance feels purposeful, even if painful. Each obstacle becomes a test of commitment, filtering out what is shallow and reinforcing what is deep. In this way, obstacles are not only teachers, but gatekeepers. They demand proof of seriousness before granting access to higher levels of growth. It can be helpful to remember that obstacles are universal. Every person you admire has faced them. Every success story includes chapters of struggle. The difference between those who rise and those who retreat is not the absence of obstacles, but the use of them. Some allow obstacles to define them, shrinking their identity into stories of limitation. Others allow obstacles to refine them, expanding their identity into stories of resilience. This choice is available to you in every moment of resistance. You cannot always control the obstacle, but you can always control the interpretation. Over time, this approach transforms your relationship with difficulty. Instead of fearing obstacles, you begin to expect them. Instead of dreading them, you begin to welcome the information they bring. This does not mean you seek suffering for its own sake. It means you recognize that suffering without learning is wasted, while suffering with awareness is investment. Every obstacle becomes a deposit into the account of wisdom, and wisdom generates compound interest in the form of better decisions, stronger systems, and greater success. The truth is that your future will not be free of obstacles, but it does not need to be. The solution is not to eliminate resistance, but to reinterpret it. Obstacles are inevitable, but defeat is optional. By choosing to treat every challenge as data, you convert what could have been detours into stepping stones. You create a system in which even setbacks move you forward because they refine your methods, sharpen your vision, and expand your resilience. In this way, obstacles cease to be enemies of progress and become partners in creation. They are not detours from your future, they are part of the road toward it. Chapter 9: Alignment, the Science of Coherence. Every system, whether mechanical, biological, or human, functions most effectively when its parts are aligned. A machine in which the gears are misaligned grinds, overheats, and eventually breaks down. A body in which the organs and processes are out of balance develops illness. A human life in which the mind, body, and spirit are fragmented suffers from confusion, wasted energy, and diminished outcome. Alignment is the principle of coherence, the state in which all parts of a system are working together toward a common purpose with minimal resistance. In personal transformation, alignment is not a luxury, it is a necessity. Without it, progress is halting, inconsistent, and fragile. With it, progress is fluid, sustainable, and powerful. Alignment begins with clarity of purpose. If you are unclear about what you want, your actions will scatter in multiple directions, producing inconsistent results. But clarity alone is not enough. You must ensure that your beliefs, habits, and values all support that purpose. Many people fail to achieve their vision, not because they lack intelligence or effort, but because their system is fragmented. They say they want health, but hold beliefs that exercise is a chore and sustain habits that undermine their body. They say they want wealth, but carry values that demonize money or habits that squander it. The system is pulling against itself, creating friction that slows or sabotages progress. Alignment removes this friction by ensuring that every part of your system is working in coherence. Coherence is not merely a philosophical idea, it is observable in science. In physics, coherence describes the state in which waves are in phase, amplifying each other rather than canceling out. In biology, coherence describes the synchronization of systems within the body, such as the rhythm between the heart and the nervous system. In psychology, coherence describes the alignment between one's thoughts, feelings, and action. In all cases, coherence creates efficiency and strength. When your inner world is coherent, energy flows without unnecessary resistance. Decisions become clearer, actions become easier, and outcomes become more predictable. Misalignment, by contrast, creates internal conflict, wasted effort, and inconsistent results. One of the most profound sources of misalignment is the gap between stated values and actual behavior. Values are the principles you claim to live by, but habits reveal the principles you truly live by. If you claim to value growth but spend hours each day numbing yourself with distractions, there is a misalignment. If you claim to value family but rarely invest quality time with them, there is a misalignment. If you claim to value integrity but cut corners in your work, there is a misalignment. This gap between words and actions is more than hypocrisy. It is systemic inefficiency. Energy leaks through inconsistency, and the system fails to produce desired outcomes. True alignment requires narrowing this gap until your habits, beliefs, and values reinforce rather than contradict one another. Alignment also extends to the relationship between inner identity and outer goals. Many people set goals that are inconsistent with their self-pursuit. They pursue wealth while secretly believing they are undeserving of it. They chase success while clinging to identities of inadequacy. They desire love while identifying as unworthy of it. In these cases, progress feels like self-sabotage because the outer goal and the inner identity are at war. Lasting transformation occurs when identity and goals align. When you see yourself as someone who is capable, worthy, and resourceful, your goals no longer feel like foreign aspirations, but natural extensions of who you are. This is why identity work is critical to alignment. You must become the kind of person who embodies the outcomes you desire, not merely someone who chases them. Environment plays a crucial role in alignment. Even if your beliefs and habits are coherent, a misaligned environment can undermine progress. For instance, someone committed to sobriety who spends every evening surrounded by drinkers is fighting against their environment. Someone committed to health who stocks their kitchen with processed food is living in misalignment. Alignment requires not only internal coherence but external support. This does not mean your environment must be perfect, but it must be designed in such a way that it reduces friction and reinforces your values and goals. Every supportive cue in your environment makes alignment easier. Every contradictory cue makes it harder. The science of alignment also applies to relationships. Human beings are deeply influenced by the people around them. If your closest relationships are misaligned with your vision, progress becomes a constant battle. If you are striving for growth while surrounded by cynicism, striving for wealth while surrounded by scarcity, striving for transformation while surrounded by complacency, the friction will drain your energy. This does not mean abandoning everyone who does not share your path, but it does mean intentionally cultivating relationships that align with your values and vision. Alignment in relationships creates synergy, where mutual support amplifies growth. Misalignment creates drag, where constant resistance slows progress. Choosing relationships carefully is therefore an essential act of alignment. Another dimension of alignment is rhythm. Life is not only about what you do, but when you do it. Just as biological systems operate on rhythms, circadian cycles, heartbeats, respiratory patterns, your personal system thrives when it honors rhythm. Misalignment with rhythm creates burnout or stagnation. Working without rest, consuming without reflection, or pushing without pause are forms of misalignment. Alignment with rhythm means balancing action with recovery, intensity with rest, output with input. This rhythm sustains energy over the long term, allowing progress to compound without collapse. Many people fail not because they lack ability but because they ignore rhythm, sprinting until exhaustion rather than aligning with sustainable cycles. The beauty of alignment is that it creates effortlessness. This does not mean life becomes free of obstacles, but it means progress feels less like pushing against resistance and more like moving with current. When your beliefs, habits, identity, environment, relationships, and rhythms are aligned with your vision, momentum builds naturally. Decisions become easier because the system is coherent. You no longer wrestle with internal contradictions or external sabotage. You act in harmony with who you are becoming, and outcomes flow as natural expressions of that harmony. Alignment does not remove the need for effort, but it makes effort effective. Alignment also builds trust, both with yourself and with others. When you live in coherence, people recognize integrity. They see that your words and actions match, that your inner identity supports your outer goals. This consistency builds credibility, attracting opportunities and relationships. At the same time, alignment builds self-trust. Each time you act in accordance with your values and vision, you reinforce your own reliability. Self-trust is the foundation of confidence, and confidence is the foundation of bold action. Without alignment, self-trust weakens, because every contradiction erodes your sense of integrity. With alignment, self-trust strengthens, and you move forward with assurance. It is worth acknowledging that alignment is a process, not a destination. No system is perfectly aligned all the time. Life is dynamic and circumstances change. New challenges, new opportunities, and new stages of life will test coherence. The goal is not permanent perfection but continuous calibration. Like a pilot making constant adjustments to stay on course, you must continually observe, reflect, and realign. This ongoing process ensures that your system remains coherent even as external conditions shift. Alignment is not about rigidity, but about responsiveness, the ability to bring all parts of yourself into harmony with your evolving vision. In the end, alignment is the hidden force behind all lasting transformation. Without it, vision falters, habits crumble, and mindset wavers. With it, vision gains traction, habits endure, and mindset thrives. Alignment is the state in which the system of your life functions as one coherent whole, every part reinforcing the other toward a shared future. When you achieve this state, you no longer feel divided within yourself. You become integrated, focused, and powerful. The science of coherence reminds us that the greatest strength lies not in scattered effort but in unified purpose, and in that unity, the truth becomes clear. The solution to your future is not found in fragments, but in alignment. Chapter 10. Future Self, Becoming the Solution You Seek. Every step you have taken through this journey leads to a single realization. The future is not something you wait for, it is something you become. You are not separate from the success you envision, the wealth you desire, or the transformation you long for. All of these outcomes are simply expressions of the person you are capable of becoming. The concept of the future self is therefore not abstract, it is intensely practical. Your future self is not a stranger waiting to appear one day. It is a version of you that is being shaped now by every thought you cultivate, every habit you practice, and every choice you make. The secret to building the life you want is to begin embodying your future self in the present, treating every decision as a vote for the person you are becoming. The science of identity tells us that behavior flows from self-emission. If you see yourself as someone incapable of discipline, your habits will reflect that belief. If you see yourself as someone capable of persistence and creativity, your actions will align with that. This means that the future self is not just a vision to chase, but an identity to embody. When you ask yourself, who do I need to become to live the future I imagine, you activate a powerful shift. You stop focusing only on external outcomes and start focusing on internal evolution. You stop waiting for the future to arrive and start building it now, from the inside out. This process requires clarity. You cannot embody what you cannot define. Take time to envision your future self with detail. How does this person think? How do they manage their time, their money, their relationships? How do they carry themselves, respond to setbacks, and pursue opportunities? The clearer the image, the easier it becomes to measure your current actions against it. Each day becomes a question. Does this decision bring me closer to or further from the person I am becoming? These small daily calibrations accumulate, and over time they transform you. Just as the body you inhabit today is the result of countless meals and movements over years, the self you will become tomorrow is the result of countless choices and habits today. There is a natural resistance to this idea because many believe they must wait until circumstances change before they can change themselves. They say, "When I earn more money, then I will think like a wealthy person. When I find the right partner, then I will act like someone worthy of love. When I succeed, then I will believe in myself." This is a reversal of the true sequence. Circumstances do not create identity. Identity creates circumstance. You must think like a wealthy person before wealth arrives. You must act like someone worthy of love before love flourishes. You must believe in yourself before success validates it. The future self must be lived into existence, not waited upon. The practice of becoming your future self is not about pretending or faking. It is about aligning your actions with your highest potential, even if the external evidence has not yet caught up. A person who desires to be healthy begins by moving, eating differently, and resting with intention, even before visible change appears. A person who desires to be financially free begins by saving, learning, and investing wisely, even when the numbers are still small. A person who desires to be impactful begins by contributing, creating, and leading in small ways even before recognition arrives. Each of these actions may feel minor, but they are profound because they shift identity. Over time, they accumulate into proof that reinforces the new self. Obstacles inevitably test the future self. Setbacks whisper that you are not ready, not capable, not worthy. In these moments, it is tempting to retreat into the comfort of the present identity. But becoming your future self requires persistence through discomfort. Growth always feels unfamiliar because it stretches the boundaries of who you have been. The discomfort is not proof you are failing, but proof you are evolving. Each time you respond to challenge as your future self would, you strengthen that identity. Each time you choose resilience over resignation, discipline over distraction, growth over stagnation, you reinforce the system of your future. What feels forced today becomes natural tomorrow. Relationships also shape the future self. Surrounding yourself with people who reflect and reinforce the identity you are building accelerates transformation. If you aspire to growth but surround yourself with complacency, the gravitational pull backward is strong. If you aspire to wealth but surround yourself with scarcity, the mindset of limitation will erode your progress. If you aspire to confidence but surround yourself with cynicism, doubt will dominate. The future self requires environments, both internal and external, that support coherence. This is why intentional communities, mentors, and aligned relationships are invaluable. They remind you of who you are becoming when your present self wavers. The future self is not static. As you evolve, your vision evolves too. This is not a sign of failure, but of growth. The person you are becoming today may not be the same person you aspire to be in 5 years because you will have expanded, learned, and refined. The goal is not to lock yourself into a rigid image, but to commit to continuous evolution. Each version of your future self is a stepping stone, not a final destination. When you live with this mindset, you release the pressure of perfection and embrace the process of becoming. You stop chasing an endpoint and start living as a creator in motion. Wealth, happiness, and fulfillment are all byproducts of becoming your future self. They are not separate achievements, but natural outcomes of alignment. A person who consistently embodies responsibility, vision, discipline, and resilience inevitably creates conditions for wealth. A person who consistently nurtures integrity, love, and contribution inevitably creates conditions for fulfillment. A person who consistently aligns identity with action inevitably creates conditions for confidence and joy. The outcomes are not random. They are predictable outputs of the system you build by becoming. The deepest truth of all is that your future self is not hidden somewhere beyond reach. It is not a stranger who will arrive one day to rescue you. It is you, shaped, stretched, and refined by your choices. Every day you live is a chance to cast a vote for the self you are becoming. Each decision, however small, is a brushstroke on the canvas of your future. The masterpiece is not created in a single stroke, but in thousands of strokes layered over time. If you want to know the person you will be 5 or 10 years from now, look at the person you are rehearsing today. That rehearsal is your future in progress. To become the solution you seek is to embrace the truth that you are not waiting for the future to arrive. You are building it moment by moment, choice by choice, habit by habit. You are not incomplete or unworthy until some external milestone validates you. You are a system capable of growth, adaptation, and transformation. And the more intentionally you live as your future self, the more inevitable your outcomes become. In the final analysis, the future is not a mystery to be solved or a gift to be given. It is a self to be lived into, and that self, shaped by vision, sustained by habits, empowered by mindset, aligned by coherence, and refined through obstacles, is already within you. You are the beginning, the process, and the solution.